Moria hadn't slept in days. She had looked for all of her ingredients to fulfill her future-seeing potion. The cauldron's brew would turn into an all-seeing surface. She couldn't stand the thought of losing yet another contest to Clever. Her anger simmered as she watched him charming the villagers year after year, always one step ahead. She knew that if she couldn't win fairly, she'd have to resort to something darker. After all, she wasn't above using a bit of trickery to get what she wanted. With Orlinda's crystal ball shattered, Moria knew she couldn't rely on seeing the future to plan her next move through Orlinda. Plus, she was worried Orlinda may suspect something. It was too soon to go see the village seer, but she could try and mimic it with her new brew. She stood by her cauldron, tossing the ingredients like the instructions called for. "It won't end well," her cat inserted sarcastically. She ignored him and kept throwing in her ingredients. Moments later, she needed to throw in a raven's feather and she had misplaced it. She asked Daniel Thorne if he would find one. "I guess," he answered with an unmotivated mood. He took off and headed into the forest. He found the feather almost instantly, but instead of returning to be on standby and search for other things, he decided to take a nap. And when he would wake up, he'd rush to her side and tell her he just found the feather. And hopefully she would be finished only needing this one feather. He fell fast asleep. The day turned to night and night to morning. A big blast woke him up. He opened his eyes and said, "What was that? And gosh, I don't even feel rested," he said. He thought he only napped for a little while, but it was the next day. He scurried back with the feather in his mouth to discover that Moria almost killed herself. "Where were you?" she asked, sitting on the ground. "I searched and had to go to the gradient forest to find a feather. Took me all night to travel for you and I'm just now returning. I am so tired and exhausted. Why are you all black-faced?" he asked. "Looks like your cheating backfired, literally," he added. "I needed that feather. I looked for one, and guess I found the wrong one. As soon as I placed it in the cauldron, it blew up. I guess I did it wrong. I told you it wouldn't end well," he uttered. "The belly of the cauldron did more than tell you the future. It painted your face like one of Clever's pumpkins in the decorating contest. Maybe you should enter that cauldron in his contest. You may have a better chance at winning then." He laughed as Moria rushed off to clean her face. No one but her needed to see the future to know how Clever would once again be the crowd favorite. And so, she turned the page for a new potion this time. It was time to cheat in a way that would make sure Clever never saw it coming. As the annual pumpkin contest approached, Moria worked tirelessly on her newest brew. Potion so subtle no one would suspect it. This potion, when applied to pumpkins, would make them appear beautiful and vibrant on the outside, but inside, they would rot within days, ruining his reputation. Moria's plan was to sneak into Clever's stall the night before the contest and coat his pumpkins with the potion, ensuring that they would look perfect just long enough to win, but spoil soon after. "I'll teach him," Moria muttered to herself as she brewed the potion late into the night. "He won't see it coming." Daniel Thorne watched from his usual spot by the hearth, yawning lazily. "Cheating again, are we?" he asked, his voice laced with sarcasm. "You didn't learn your lesson this morning?" he added. Moria scowled. "Of course I am. It's the only way to beat him. And it wasn't me, it was the ingredients. And if it backfires again like it usually does?" Daniel Thorne stretched out, flicking his tail. "It won't," Moria snapped. "This time, I've perfected it." Late that night, Moria snuck into the market. The moonlight cast eerie shadows over the empty stalls as she crept through the marketplace. Clever's pumpkins were laid out neatly, just waiting to be ruined. With a wicked grin, Moria uncorked her potion and began brushing it onto each of his pumpkins, making sure to coat every single one. When she was finished, she slipped back into the shadows, confident that she had sealed Clever's fate. The next morning, the villagers gathered once again for the annual pumpkin contest. This year with an added permanent decorating category that had everyone buzzing with excitement. Clever's stall, as always, was filled with beautifully arranged pumpkins of all shapes and sizes: orange, green, yellow, white, and everything in between. Moria, standing at her own stall, watched with a gleam in her eye as the villagers flocked to Clever's pumpkins, unaware of the rot festering inside. Clever greeted each villager with his usual charm, while Medusa, his perpetually negative wife, stood beside him, shaking her head. "This is going to be a disaster," she muttered. "You always do this." "It'll be fine," Clever said with a smile, handing a tiny pumpkin to a young child. "Everyone loves pumpkins." Moria smirked from across the market, watching the scene unfold. She felt a thrill of satisfaction knowing that, in just a few days, the pumpkins would rot and Clever's reputation would be ruined. The villagers would turn to her next year, and she would finally have her victory. But just as Moria was about to turn away, something unexpected happened. A group of villagers approached her stall, excited about the decorating contest. They had heard that Moria's pumpkins were perfect for painting and decorating, and they wanted to buy a few for the contest. Moria blinked in surprise. She hadn't anticipated selling any pumpkins. Her sole focus had been entirely on ruining Clever's chances. But now, with her own pumpkins gaining attention, she realized she had a chance to win both categories. Quickly adjusting her attitude, Moria smiled sweetly and handed over the pumpkins, eager to see how the contest would unfold. "Good luck," she said, her voice dripping with false kindness. As the contest got underway, the villagers set to work carving and decorating their pumpkins. Moria watched closely, waiting for the moment when Clever's pumpkins would start to show signs of rot. But as the day went on, something strange happened. Clever's pumpkins remained perfectly intact. Moria's heart sank as she realized her potion hadn't worked. The pumpkins looked just as vibrant as ever, and the villagers continued to admire them. Worse, the painting contest was an even bigger hit than she had anticipated, and Clever's pumpkins, with their unique shapes and colors, were a favorite among the decorators as her potion helped enhance their vibrant colors. By the end of the day, it was clear who had won the hearts of the villagers once again. Clever's pumpkins, both carved and decorated, were the talk of the market. The villagers couldn't get enough of them, and even Medusa, ever the pessimist, had to admit that the contest had been a success. Moria, on the other hand, stood in the shadows, watching in disbelief. Her cheating had failed. Her potion had done nothing to ruin Clever's pumpkins, and she had lost once again. Daniel Thorne padded up beside her, his whiskers twitching in amusement. "I told you cheating wouldn't work," he said, in a mocking tone. "You should have known by now," he added. "Shut up," Moria muttered, her fists clenched in frustration. "I was so close." As the villagers packed up and the market began to wind down, Clever approached Moria, his usual friendly smile on his face. "Better luck next year, Moria," he said, his voice kind but with a hint of amusement. Moria forced a tight smile, her anger barely contained. "Sure," she whispered under her breath as he walked away. "Next year I'll win." As Moria returned to her cold cottage, her mind was already racing with plans for next year's contest. She couldn't afford another failure. Clever had bested her yet again, but next time would be different. Next year, she would use everything in her arsenal: magic, trickery, even sabotage to finally claim victory. "I'll make him pay," she muttered, her eyes gleaming with determination. "No matter what it takes." Daniel Thorne, curled up by the hearth, glanced up at her with a knowing look. "Sure, Moria," he said with a yawn. "We'll see how that goes." But Moria wasn't listening. She was already planning, scheming, dreaming of when she would finally prove herself as the greatest pumpkin grower, becoming known as the pumpkin which would be a well-deserving honor and title to bear. The pumpkin which would be the only name that the village would have no choice but to know and chant, even if it meant cheating her way to the top.